Companies are scaling much faster simply because they can control the profitability and they have the insight. Instead of asking for a ROAS of, let's say, 5 times back in revenue, you actually ask for Google, go and get me €2 back in profit every time I use a euro. And this is where the magic happens. The cool thing when you have the profit per order and not per product, but the order coming out of it, you're comparing apples to apples. We track an average of 17% more conversions than regular tracking. So if you get more signals to the algorithm, you can perform and make better decisions.
Hi, Frederik. Welcome to the podcast. So good to have you here. Frederik Boysen is the CEO of Profit Metrics. So very excited to have him here to talk about that and how that can help businesses grow. So Frederik, welcome to the podcast. What motivated you to start Profit Metrics and what is it all about?
Thanks for having me. I've essentially been in e-commerce for 18 years now. So I've had different stores, some with good success, some with not as much success. But essentially, I started Profit Metrics because I was, like you, scaling a lot on Meta, using a lot of ad spend, but I was also using a lot of ad spend on Google. And I also had a newsletter list of 400,000 people. So I used a lot of different channels and I was just counting totally on my target ROAS that I've calculated maybe a year back. And what ended up happening with my company was that the margin started changing. So I was maybe advertising high margin products on Meta, and then people ended up buying lower margin products like perfumes or beauty products, which essentially didn't give me that return that I was counting on in my average ROAS. So I was just scaling and suddenly I got some numbers back from my accountant. They didn't really add up. So I had another accounting agency to go over my numbers, but I just kept on scaling. I was sitting like a day trader, creating a lot of different campaigns in the morning and then scaling them up with 2, 3, 4,000 euros a day. And then I got those numbers back and I thought I was in a big plus, but I was actually in a big minus. So I had to react because I had a lot of employees. And I knew some advertising were profitable, but now I also knew some were not, but I couldn't see which one was profitable. So the only thing I could really do was to turn down the ad spend. And what happened was then the sales didn't come in and I ended up with a huge cash flow problem because I had all of these fixed expenses. So I tried everything I could, but actually went bankrupt. I couldn't save the company. But I found an investor right away that believed in the idea. So we bought up the bankruptcy and paid out all the creditors and made different agreements. And that was when I started over and we're looking at what was the problems actually. Why are we using an average margin on all revenue coming in an e-commerce business to figure out up against ad spend if we make money when almost no e-commerce business are making the same margin? So I looked for a tool that could send in the real profit into Meta and Google Ads and so on. There wasn't anything in the market. As well as I needed some kind of tool where I could look holistically at my business and only have the orders once. So the incomes once, because we know that that was what I found out. That conversion could be in my email attribution system and it could be in Meta. It could also be in Google. So the numbers look much better when I looked in the platform. So I needed a tool where I could click on a button and see how much profit did I make after ad spend the last couple of weeks and even fixed cost. I was sitting in some spreadsheets, but I couldn't find anything. So I thought, okay, I need to get something built for myself. So I got 2 developers to build a very primitive tool, but it worked. Suddenly I could see which ads were profitable. I could see which ones weren't. So I knew where to scale. I could always look in my holistic numbers or my backend numbers in this little dashboard where I could see, okay, I had 1,000 orders here and how much profit did I make? How much ad spend did I have, and is it covering my fixed costs? So I always knew if I could be more aggressive or I should be a little bit more conservative, and that just changed my business. Suddenly I had a healthy, profitable business again. So I thought, okay, I'll put this company up for sale and build a tool that everyone can use. So I was lucky to make a good exit on that company. And that's a little bit over 5 years ago. And then I invested it into the MVP of Profit Metrics. And yeah, fast going forward to today, we are 27 people now across 13 different countries. So yeah, and have customers all over the world and very happy customers. And we have, gotten this Poas profit on ad spend out in the world. So we believe that we are helping in a lot of business, and that is my motivation. Not that these should end if businesses are in such a bad position as I were, but many e-commerce companies are struggling with knowing their profitability, and they're always working on late P&Ls coming back from their account, and cannot really react in real time. So that's my motivation for starting Profit Metrics.
Amazing. So it was really started with you solving your own problem, and then
Correct.
From there creating a solution that we could scale to others. And could you walk us through what happens when a business get in contact with Profit Metrics and how they get onboarded and how that changes the way they do advertising?
Yeah. So normally it starts off with a demo where we talk about their business, figure out what is their needs, what channels are they using, what kind of cost structure do they have, and so on. And then essentially, if they want to move forward, they get a module, or maybe they use, if it's Shopify, it's just an app, or if it's a custom solution, we help them set up. But normally it's something that takes, a developer an hour to install this module or something like that. And then we jump on a onboarding with them. And then we essentially help them put in the cost structures, like what is our shipping cost to different countries or with different shipping methods or providers? What is the payment processing fee for PayPal or Klarna or credit cards? And they put in the cost of goods if they have them. Most companies have them somewhere, so we help them structure, get them into the systems if they're not. So most often we get them from the platforms, otherwise we can get them in a feed. And if they don't have all of the cost price, we have some margins we can fall back on. And then we could essentially connect the platform. So what we do is we track everything that happens on the site, and then we connect up to, let's say, Meta, Google Ads, GA4, and then we can send that data in, both with revenue, but also profit data server side into the platform. So you can actually see it inside Meta when you're working there. You can see it on campaign and ad level. So where you only saw your revenue before, now you also see your profit. So you can start optimizing it. Or for example, in Google, you can get the algorithm to actually bid for the profit. And then we most often work with marketing agencies or internal teams of how to activate the data. We are not a marketing agency, so we don't do any marketing, but we help and train the people that are using the system. And so it's normally a process of maybe an onboarding that takes 45 minutes. And it's very, very fast. And sometimes if it's a custom solution, there needs to be an integration meeting. But other than that, it's very, very fast to set up. So within 3, 4, 5 days, you're fully set up.
Perfect. All right. So it's a quick process to set up. You can set up within 3 to 4 days. And for your clients that are then optimizing once the new data comes in, is there a learning phase that Google Ads needs to go through?
Yeah. So first you need to collect the data so you know what is the profitability. So normally a lot of people thinking about, we call it Poas, profit on ad spend, instead of using return on ad spend. Return on ad spend is correct, but somebody shifted it out with revenue, and that was not supposed to be that, because revenue and return is not the same. So they first get the data in, and many believe that you're first doing like Poas or profit bidding once you use it in the algorithm. I believe that as soon as you see the profit on campaign or ad level or product level, then you would see, hey, we are actually much more profitable than we thought. And then you maybe decrease your ROAS, or maybe we are much more less profitable, and you then increase your ROAS. So as soon as you see that data, you start making decisions and actually decreasing that ROAS target. And maybe 3-4 weeks in, when you have collected some data, then many choose to actually let the algorithm bid for it. So you're actually optimizing for the profit value. So instead of asking for a ROAS of, let's say, 5 times back in revenue every time you use a euro or dollar, then you actually ask for, Google, go and get me 2 euros back in profit every time I use a euro. And this is, of course, where the magic happens. But I believe that as soon as you have that data, and also you can go back and look at how is my business doing, you will make better decisions, because you not only have the revenue, you also have the profit now. And it makes the whole organization, including the marketing agencies, so much more aligned with the real goals of the business.
Perfect. So you're, instead of just bidding for a return on revenue, you're actually being able to bid for a return on the profit, or the profit that you're getting. And that could be on each product level, right?
Yeah, product level, ad level. And the beauty is just that was what ROAS were supposed to be. So if you have a consulting company or you have a SaaS business like I have, you more or less know your revenue is essentially in many cases your profit, and maybe you have some cost, but you know those percentages. But in an e-commerce business, there's so many different things like free shipping or discounts or different costs and so on. But the cool thing when you have the profit per order and not per product, but actually the order coming out of it, and you then have the ad spend, you're actually comparing apples to apples, because you cannot compare revenue with an ad cost. You have to go back and figure out some kind of average. And that's the whole point of it, that you know exactly that break even within that channel is 1. So everything above that is actually profitable. And then you just have to figure out how the channels combined are working and how much extra profit after those variable order costs you need to have to cover your fixed costs. And again, that depends on if you're growing or you want lifetime growth. So you're getting a lot of new clients in that comes back. So there's a lot of strategy going into that, but at least you know what is the break-even cost always, and that's always the one.
Got it. And what impact have you seen that this has had on businesses that you have worked with, being able to really see the break-even costs in real time?
Essentially, what we often see is once you start by essentially removing all the crap. So you remove all of the unprofitable ads or products and so on, but you often also see something that is much better than you thought, that where you're with the ROAS, often agencies and businesses are setting a conservative high target just to make sure they make money. And that is where you suddenly see with the profit that, hey, this is actually holding us back. So we often see that you save some ad spend, but you don't put them in the pocket, you actually allocate it better. But once you have this data, that's also where, if you are an internal marketing team or an agency, it's much easier to talk to that e-commerce company and say, hey, we can actually scale. We have the profitability. We can see in this channel, there's more volume. Let's scale. And then you can see the exact results in our dashboard, for example, how much contribution margin did we make the last week? So we see that companies are scaling much, much faster, simply because they can control the profitability and they have the insight. So they are more comfortably adding more spend, because otherwise they're always afraid. And that's why we always see those high target ROAS where if you maybe need 5, let's have 6, then we're secure. But that going from 5 to 6 or whatever it is, that's maybe where a lot of volume already are. If you can actually decrease it and still have the profitability, that's where you can go into more bidding auctions.
Complete. Okay, so being more confident really, and being able to better allocate your budget so that you can scale faster. So it's, yeah.
And then you can work all the way into also many say, yeah, but we don't make profit on the first conversion. Or maybe we have, if somebody comes in and buy a low margin product in that order, we don't make that much, so we will not bid so much. But you can also bid out in the future. So if you know your exact lifetime profit within 90 days, maybe on that first order acquisition or customer acquisition, you then bid more aggressive. But when you know the profit, then you can go much more aggressive, but you will stop if you are going too aggressive. And that's often the problem with customer acquisition, that either people go too aggressive or they're too conservative, but they don't really know. So that's again where the profit also, if you're just going for future profitability, then you can also control that as well.
Beautiful. So it's also much easier than to forecast and have control for the future.
Yeah.
So it really helps business owners to better plan.
Exactly.
And also a question I think that a lot of business owners and advertisers are thinking about. So how well does Profit Metrics integrate with my existing system?
The way I have wanted to build a company is not to lock customers in. We always recommend keep your own tracking, keep everything. So we make it side by side. So we don't have any long-term contracts. We want customers to stay because they get the value. So essentially, if you have that tracking you already had, and then you have hours, what normally happens is the marketers will shift over to hours because, for example, in Google, we track an average of 17% more conversions than regular tracking. So if you get more signals to the algorithm, you can perform and make better decisions better. So we always have that. So it shift over, but they still have their own. So we don't go in and conflict with their existing. So it's very easy to try it out. And of course, our agenda is that people get so much value out of ours, so they just stay. But it doesn't conflict. It's not like we are doing anything to their existing tracking. They just get an extra layer. So in Google, you will get extra conversion actions. In Facebook, we take over another event. In GA4, we make a new property. And normally that just becomes the default the business are using, but they keep their own. Maybe not for years, but they keep their own. So we don't conflict with their existing setup.
Got it. So it integrates very well with the most common systems out there.
We have 14 different platforms, like native platforms, the Shopify, the Magento, PrestaShop, WooCommerce, Shopware, all of these platforms we have native integrations into. And also as well, we have one-click installers to Meta, TikTok, Bing, Google Ads, and GA4, and so on. So it's super easy to integrate and get started to test. The only thing is you just need to find your cost data, your shipping cost, and so on. But everyone has it somewhere. Otherwise, how can they run a business if they don't have the cost price somewhere? How can they price the products and so on? It's just we are helping them structure it in a way so they can get it from their financial system into a feed or into Shopify or something like that, so we can pull it from there.
Absolutely. Got it. Another question that I actually got about profit metrics that a business owner was curious about was, how does it work for lead generation businesses that are more B2B focused, as an example?
I would say we are most often not the best fit. We are focusing heavily on e-commerce. We have lead gen companies where it's working very well. But one of the big problems we're solving is the profit and profit metrics, where lead gen often know their profitability. It's not so different. Of course, there can be businesses where there is some upsales afterwards and different bundles, but most often it's a bigger problem in e-commerce. So we can essentially set it up for some lead gen companies, but we often say maybe it's better to set up enhanced conversions and then send in different values based on when the customer actually buys and make upsales and so on. So we try and focus mainly on the e-commerce because that's often those who have the biggest problems with the margins and are struggling with the tracking. Of course, lead gen everyone is struggling a little bit with the tracking when everything is going so fast in the industry, but we're trying to focus mainly on that. Not saying we are not going into lead gen because we have a lot of ideas around it, but we just want to be the best at the e-commerce part first.
Got it. So it might be if a lead gen company has very complex upsell schemes, it may be different type of values that they really need to track, but in general, you would say?
There is also the lead gen companies, and that is essentially those we are working mostly with if it has some kind of e-commerce component. So maybe you're signing up and buying a little bit, and then you're signing up to an account, and then you're buying more later on, and that can actually be very different if you're buying office supplies. How much are you buying or something like that, where they actually have a very differentiated structure. Or we have a couple of businesses. We have one especially that are selling floors, where people actually go in and buy a bundle of different floors, samples, but most of their orders are then coming by phone or email afterwards. So what they do is they send them the real order where they make the real profit into our solution. So we have the tracking from the initial purchase online, and then we can send that second purchase into the platform so they get the real value and profitability. And once they have sold that floor over the phone or through email, because we can match it up on something like the email, because we will have that from the first initial order or sample lead gen formula.
Amazing. Yeah, that must be very helpful for them to be able to track that directly. And I'm also curious, Frederick, when it comes to setting up profit metrics, if you are someone who's mainly used to working with Google Analytics and seeing those reports, is there some type of learning curve or educational content that you would take me through to get up to speed on using profit metrics?
Yeah, so we see a lot of our clients are still using GA4 as they did yesterday, but we see that businesses and agencies are moving towards looking a little bit more at holistic numbers. Because we all know that if we look in analytics, that is analytics truth, it's model data. Meta have its own truth. Google Ads have its own truth. Everyone is trying to maybe take credit and they don't really see all the channels. But if you look at numbers from a Shopify, if you had 100 orders yesterday and you have that profit and you have your full ad spend from both TikTok, Meta, and Google Ads, and you have all of your cost structures like fixed cost, those numbers do not deceive you. They are the real thing because they are actually back-end numbers. So we see that companies look at a channel metric sometimes in GA4, but they go back and say, okay, if we can see the contribution margin in our business going up, then we can go in and invest more in marketing. And then it's, of course, the marketing specialist that needs to figure out where should we invest the next dollar. But we often see that transition, and that's often what we help them with, looking a little bit more holistic at that dashboard. Also, due to privacy reasons in EU, there's all of these GDPR and cookies and so on. So data is going away, but backend numbers are not impacted by that. We always will have the full ad spend. We will always have all of the cost data. We'll always have 100% of the orders. The same with, for example, new and existing customers. Those can be measured on numbers coming from the Magento or Shopify. We can also calculate the CAC or what Poas, profit on ad spend on new customers, did we have, lifetime profit and so on. Those numbers do not change due to privacy reasons. Of course, there can always come something, but yeah, we see now Meta just said that they are going to change a little bit the way they are doing attribution. So suddenly it will be hard to actually compare year-over-year numbers if they change that. But you can compare backend numbers like orders, revenue, average order value, CAC, and so on. Those you can still, a number of new customers, those you can still compare year-over-year. So we see that transition a lot. There's, of course, also the way of looking at profit instead of revenue. That's also some kind of training or some transition, but once people understand it, it just makes everything easier because you don't have to count on, is my ROAS too high, too low, or so on. Here you can actually just, compare those apples to apples. So there is a barrier, but it's actually very easy once you see the numbers. It just comes by itself.
Fantastic. And as someone who has contact with hundreds of agencies and businesses, of course, what are you seeing kind of is coming for the future of this online space, and how are you seeing that it's changing?
Yeah, it's a little bit the same answer, but I'm seeing a change from looking at, campaign level attribution and just counting on that is correct to moving towards looking at a business holistically. What is the real health, the real truth of the business? And then I also see a move towards mixed marketing models, going in and looking at MMM and actually seeing how should we how should we allocate our budgets for the different channels. And I believe a lot in that. It was gone for so many years. It's such an old way of doing it, but now it's coming back. And essentially it's due to those privacy reasons where we will probably always be able to see impressions in platforms. And those impressions doesn't change that much. Sometimes there is a little change in the platform. We will always have the ad spend and we will always have the backend number of conversions. So I believe that there will be a lot of change in that and a lot of new products coming out with mixed marketing models. You can see the Robin from Facebook, and Google just came with Meridian. So a lot of things are happening there where it's something that have been a little bit forgotten, and it has mainly been when you did TV ads and offline commercials. Those big advertisers were using it, but now I believe it will come to e-commerce and be more used there as well.
Fantastic. And Frederick, you've been an entrepreneur now for a bunch of years, even done an exit.
18 years, yeah.
18 years, even done an exit, sold a company. I'm curious, what would you say are kind of your top 3 learnings from these 18 years as an entrepreneur?
The first one is probably your numbers, because I didn't know. I was extremely great at creating growth, sales, revenue always went up, but I didn't know my numbers. I wasn't deep enough into my P&L and following that. And that was the reason why I went bankrupt. The second one is probably focus. That in the start of my career, I was flipping up new e-commerce stores, new ideas, like drop shippers are now, and got the next new product or something like that, where now I've gotten older. Focusing more, that just keep on doing the same thing if it works. but also be good at actually stopping early, because sometimes I've also kept on doing something where maybe I could see some indicators it didn't work early, and then I should just have shut it down and then move to the next thing. But yeah, focus and know your numbers. That's something that have helped me a lot, especially in profit metrics. And yeah.
Very, very good learnings. Very good learnings there. Okay, beautiful. And just some final takeaways here. So for businesses that are looking to improve their profitability now, right away after listening to us, what would you say could be kind of their top 2 or 3 actions that they could take right away?
The first one is probably your numbers, because I didn't know. I was extremely great at creating growth, sales, revenue always went up, but I didn't know my numbers. I wasn't deep enough into my P&L and following that. And that was the reason why I went bankrupt. The second one is probably focus. That in the start of my career, I was flipping up new e-commerce stores, new ideas, like drop shippers are now, and got the next new product or something like that, where now I've gotten older, focusing more, that just keep on doing the same thing if it works, but also be good at actually stopping early, because sometimes I've also kept on doing something where maybe I could see some indicators it didn't work early, and then I should just have shut it down and then move to the next thing. But yeah, focus and know your numbers. That's something that have helped me a lot, especially in profit metrics. And yeah, I think it's important to build. Of course, I'm pretty biased. I believe that it should be profit metrics, but just simply starting with doing weekly P&L numbers, figuring out how many orders was there in that Shopify backend, maybe pulling them out to a sheet, and then trying to calculate some profitability, putting your ad spend, and actually measuring some of these financial numbers and structure them in a way, and just make an exercise of doing it at least once a week so you can follow it. Because waiting for a P&L coming back from your account, maybe 3 months later or monthly or whatever it is, you cannot act. If something goes wrong, it's too late, like in my story. But also, you will not act on opportunities, because maybe you're conservative or you're afraid of increasing that ad spend. But if you can see those numbers just in a pretty accurate way, then you maybe allow yourself to saying, okay, now we actually have an opportunity. We can see that we're making a good profit totally. So let's invest some more now where we have that opportunity, because that opportunity could be gone in 3 months.
Definitely. Perfect. And for anyone who would like to know more and get deeper into this, how can they get in touch with your team? And is there any tools or resources that you would recommend?
Yeah, if anybody wants to try it out or have a demo, go to profitmetrics.io and then book a demo. We both have demos for agencies. A lot of our clients are coming from agency partners. So we have this partnership where we also have certification. We have a profit metrics certification for agencies, so they can be trained in using profit and having those conversations with clients, and moving their agency over to looking more at bottom line numbers and profitability. Or it can be the e-commerce business that can also book. Or find me, look me up on LinkedIn. I'm posting a lot of content there, and shoot me a DM if anyone have any questions.
Awesome. Thank you so much for this time, Frederick. I really look forward to people learning their numbers, digging into your material, and getting in touch with you. This was a really good conversation, and I hope to speak with you again soon. Thank you so much, Frederick, for this conversation.
Thank you, Malick. Thank you for the opportunity.